This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded June 23rd, 2014, episode 204, with guest Noah Fian, Biloquistic, Blinking, Blush.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
And I'm Noah Fian with the New York Times R&D Lab.
Hey, Noah, thanks for joining us.
Are you like a member of the media? Do you consider yourself a member of the media?
I don't. I feel like it sometimes. Having that email address with the nytimes.com.
Ah, yes. You know. That could get you that can get you free entry into pretty much any trade show or anything like that. You just turn up
I'm
for
covering
a media
this event.
Yeah.
I've been tempted to try that. I have yet to actually find a place where that would get me more than I could usually get. But
a free sandwich or something.
Exactly. I'll use that
Chipotle
as soon
burrito.
As it's worthwhile.
Yeah, you could.
I'm doing an expose on burritos and.
It's customer service stuff, right? You really want to reply to Amazon with your.
I'm a unlisted, unnamed food critic, so bring out your best, please. Well, that's great. So tell us about this because I was so interested in this. So I follow you on Twitter. Your handle is AKA Media System. Other people might follow you on there as well. But the New York Times stuff, that's just so interesting to me in the crossover. So why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. It's it really interested me as well. I applied for this job because it was an R&D lab whose work I had seen in a sort of art context. I'd seen a couple of their installations, written up in PSFK or other designy places. And
what's PSFK?
PSFK is just like a sort of an everything blog, like Kottke, but a little more design focused. Are you familiar with Kottke, Jason Kottke's blog?
No.
Yeah, everything goes through there basically.
Exactly. It's truly a light filter on the internet. But so I had seen some interesting work, and then they had this job application for Maker as the job title, and I really couldn't resist that.
Right.
Yeah. So that was in, what was that, 2012, I think. I think it's been two full years that I've been there now. But a colleague of mine from the MIT Media Lab was currently working there, and she had also had only good things to say, so it was a really interesting gig to come into.
Yeah, well, we know the Media Lab is obviously, a lot of people know that one from, just kind of the widely varied and kind of wacky sometimes work, but always good stuff. So yeah, that's a good sign. It
is. The Media Lab really runs the gamut from the sort of silly to the quite serene.
Right. So this is not really a for-profit commercial arm of the New York Times, is it? It's sort of like a researchy
it's quite research focused. So it's set aside from other R&D departments that different corporations would have, because our mandate quite awesomely is not explicitly to fill the product pipeline with stuff.
Right.
Really, we've been asked to think 3 to 5 years out, and think about quite broadly different ways that emerging social and cultural and technological sort of movements can come together, and how that might make new experiences. So there's there's a really wide berth that it sort of casts, and that lets us come back with really interesting stuff. That's one day it'll be a quite CNC heavy mechanical installation, and the next it'll be a big machine learning or deep belief pool or whatnot.
So who drives the projects there, or are you free to just work on your whatever whim you like?
It's pretty open. There's we drive the projects by talking about them all the time, both within our own group, which is only 8 people or so. So we'll constantly be discussing, new technologies that have come out or things we think we can do that people haven't done yet. But at the same time, there is this nice there's a management layer above me that keeps the rest of the company in the loop in a really useful way. So I've never been told stop working on this because it's not relevant to the times. But at the same time, when 8 of us sort of think about the problems of the world today, we generally come up with something that rhymes with what the Times is doing.
Right. So is it all about solving problems, or or are there projects you just do for the sake of it because you can?
We do a lot of things because we really are interested in seeing what happens.
Right.
If we did make it, is it something we could live with? Is it something? No, really. Does it have a result that it's easiest to make a joke about? And this was a terrible idea. We really get to live out those sort of ideas or those thought experiments. One really nice thing that I appreciate, particularly after doing my master's thesis at the Media Lab, is that the scope of project can be really variable. So we have some things where maybe 3 weeks we'll spend investigating a new IC and come up with, not too much can be done here, or we'll have, 8, 12-month projects that are really, really gather momentum and involve everybody in the group. So it's like I have never been bored on the job, which is
awesome.
Quite something. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it hard to kind of get your arms around? Like, do you ever? So obviously, you have a lot of stuff where other people are presenting you with things, but sometimes when presented with the vast openness of like, well, I can do anything. Well, crap. What do I do now?
Paralysis. Yeah.
Right.
So we're rarely presented with a thing and then say, make something out of this. That's, I think, in general, as a design direction, take this thing and do something with it is usually a warning sign that there's maybe not a real problem at issue, or that maybe we're doing something just for sort of novelty's sake. And I don't mean to disparage that, because as soon as I get home, I start doing all the novelty stuff.
That's right.
That I really just want to spend an evening seeing how it works or whatnot. But in general, we really don't encounter a lot of direction from outside the department. We're really in charge of coming up with the research directions and then finding affinities between different crazy ideas and seeing what threads are going to endure.
Right. Well, I imagine like an editor coming down to your group and being like, or rather, I can't imagine them coming down and being like, well, I really want you to build me a new CNC machine.
Yeah, or I need 3 holograms, stat, I sort of dream of those situations, but they never happen, thankfully.
Yeah.
This is not something that I picture the New York Times doing. I mean, all these labs popping up everywhere and at a newspaper. Effectively, I mean, or are New York Times bigger and more all-encompassing than I imagine from the other side of the world here?
No, I think it's certainly unusual for a publisher to have an R&D department set up the way we're set up. Usually, a lot of R&D departments in publishing are a little bit more focused on integrating with partners, with sponsors, with advertisers, or with customers themselves. And that's actually, we have a separate department at the Times called the Idea Lab that is tasked with, they'll develop, experiments that go live that will be with an advertising partner, or, so they're a little bit more web heavy. They're not necessarily critical or theoretically sort of writing white papers about sort of what the near future might hold. But it's a nice division of labor, because we'll work very closely with them if we have some tech that's ready for prime time or whatnot. It's a great place to find an intervention or an opportunity to let an advertiser curate a pretty unique experience.
Like kind of like what Dave's saying. You never think, oh, who has a lot of money to spend on R&D? A lot of money just sitting in the bank. What industry is doing so well right now? Newspapers.
It's important to not be surprised by upcoming technology, right? Particularly in an industry where the main delivery format is probably going to change.
That's scary, isn't it? But it's also a new horizon, isn't it? I mean, it's
exactly. Yeah, it's a pretty exciting opportunity. One of the things that we're kicking around conceptually is, with a lot of interactions becoming in the form where information comes out to find me. So rather than, dialing up a web page or executing a query, maybe the right contextual information will come out and find me when I need it. And that leads to this question of, if the news article has been the atomic unit of news for a century now, I wonder if there are ways, given let's say a system that knows all the semantic connections between entities you mentioned in an article, are there ways for the article to sort of explode and occupy different maybe a wearable sort of interface, a screen-based summary, or even a haptic. What would it be like to get haptic updates from the Times? There are a bunch of interesting opportunities that are just now happening now that we're finally kind of moving away from the black rectangle of the smartphone being the be-all and end-all of human technology.
Right. And even that only had, a 10-year life cycle of the only run,
Yeah, I feel like it's been on its throne for a long time now. Usually things last less.
Geez, when I was a boy. Hello.
I can take you shorter than that. I was rewatching a Bond movie yesterday. It was what was the first one with what's his name? The new guy, Daniel Craig. It was 2006, and he didn't have like an iPhone. It was like some non-smartphone based thing.
Non-smartphone. Yeah, exactly. With a keyboard on it, with one of those keyboards. Yeah. Exactly.
It's totally weird, right? That's 2006.
Right? Everything expired. Yeah. It's just, laughable at this point. Although I do miss the keyboard. Man, do I miss.
Oh, who doesn't?
Yeah, I know. Okay, although I have been getting big into the swipey keyboard thing. What's the name for it?
I think it's called Swipe.
Oh, Swipe. I'm loving that. That is like that works.
You must be a better typer than I am.
It's a swiper, you mean?
Yeah, or swiper. So I mean, I'm not a great touch typer, to be totally honest. And so often I'll find new words I didn't know existed by just trying to swipe, interrogatory in a text message. Suddenly, yeah.
It's not perfect, but it's and being because I tweet so many technical type things because that's the field I'm in. Like half the time the word is not there that I actually want. So, but still, I find that a huge time saving over that hunt and peck, one finger thing. It's just so much better.
Although it enforced a nice poetic brevity sometimes. If you couldn't be bothered to just hunt and peck the whole message out, there was an excuse to have BRB.
Right.
LOL.
No, I see.
There was an excuse to sort of be brief.
I hate the shortening. I will only shorten a tweet if I absolutely have to, and I can't fit everything in.
Much respect.
I'll spend like several minutes just thinking of a way I can shorten this sentence rather than use BRB or some bloody acronyms the kids use these days.
Yep, I agree. I admit that I will often search for a non-standard way to shorten a tweet, so I won't do really into RLY. I'll take letters out of Arduino or something instead.
Oh, goodness. Or I'll just do a multi-part tweet.
Yes, although those are kind of their own joke, right? Because the whole system is against you there.
Yeah, that's it.
So you mentioned wearables. One of the things you've worked on and the thing you talked about at SolidCon where I met you was about Blush, right? This wearable. Can you tell us about that project?
Sure, yeah. So Blush is a little wearable based on the RFduino platform. And I'm kind of surprised more people have not heard of this hardware. It had a pretty successful Kickstarter. It's a little tiny ARM Cortex M0 with integrated BLE. So it's about 15 by 15 millimeters, super small. And basically Blush takes one of those units and just establishes a pretty simple correspondence with a smartphone. And the thing it does is when you and I are talking about something in real life, if we mention a topic that me or anyone from my research group has browsed in the recent past, Blush will light up. Actually, it's a little pendant, so it'll flash just to indicate, just to punctuate that there's this semantic overlap between my online and my offline behaviors.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty involved. It's a lot of the talk at Solid was kind of laying the background to talk about this 1-bit interaction, quite ironically, because the real sort of the newest part of Blush is actually the stream that informs it, which is called curriculum. And curriculum is basically a thing that everyone in my group in the R&D labs put on their browser. It's a Chrome extension. And it basically semantically analyzes the topics, the content in all the web pages that you browse. And I'll mention here that it's all of the non-encrypted web pages you browse. So no Gmail, no Twitter, mostly just Wikipedia stuff and things like that. And so it makes this real-time stream of all of the topics that my group is encountering. So it's our information diet. And it's been a really weird sort of process getting to learning to live with this new type of information about my colleagues. And so Blush was just one way for that stream of our information diet to sort of erupt into the real world.
Oh, and I just think it's a really fascinating idea, and
Thanks.
I'm just wondering where it's going to go, because there's obviously the huge elephant in the room here is privacy. Right.
Privacy,
I mean,
absolutely.
what if you're,
Absolutely.
you're taking your lunch break at work and you've still got this plug-in installed and you're searching for, a present for your wife or something, or other jobs, or something like that. I mean,
well, so that's one of the parts of the experiment that has actually been most interesting, is really interrogating that privacy and that level of intimacy, right? That we sort of conceive of the flip side of privacy is that you get this intimacy, this higher bandwidth insight into what your colleagues are thinking. And there were a number of things that made us okay with having this thing look at our browser activity. Of course, one of them is knowing that it's HTTP only and no HTTPS. The other is if we actually read the stream, it's fairly noisy. We're using a pretty noisy algorithm to do topic inference, and so it's admittedly kind of a weird noise that's uncannily familiar, but there's not too much you could derive from it. In particular, because
it's not like just a login tool and you look through people's logs.
Exactly.
It's sort of at higher level extrapolates that to a higher blurry kind of level.
And that's what the semantic inference, that's what extracting the topics lets us do, is we abstract from a list of URLs, which is also not very human readable.
Okay.
We go from this machine sort of readable list of URLs, and instead we choose to look at it semantically, to look at what topics are there rather than what pages.
And can you see who looked on what?
No,
because
it's
that's the
specifically
thing.
designed against that.
Yes, I would picture that so that you can't actually see somebody's URLs. You can't see exactly what they looked at, but you can see in general what the group is thinking and looking at.
Right? And it's a real balance between anonymity and intimacy, really. And so the other sort of side of that is everybody who is using curriculum right now, all of my 7 colleagues, they all have write access to the code as well. So they've all looked at the code. Right. And that was a big part of this for me, was if I'm setting up this database that's going to keep a temporary, there's also, by the way, the database expires every 3 weeks. So no piece of information can be retained longer than 3 weeks.
Is it a rolling cache, or does it 3 weeks? It just flushes right, so it's sort of
everything has a TTL of 3 weeks. Yeah.
Got it. Yep. Excellent.
How does it do the actual detection of the? So you said that the curriculum kind of sits there and pulls these topics out, however noisy they may be, but then it also listens to the person in real time?
That's just straight up a little hack on the Android speech recognition API. So that's the phone component of Blush, which is right now kind of the least plausible part to me. I'm looking forward to Android Wear, which promises the ability to do voice input. But it's actually quite a simple little hack just to get it continuously to recognize speech. And I found it to be quite accurate, or at least accurate enough for this type of 1-bit sort of a specific notification. The other thing is that the first thing that people want to know when Blush actuates, when it does its little flash, because we talked about something in my curriculum, the first thing they want to know is what made it go off. And for now, experimentally, I'm not interested in disclosing that. I don't want to, for example, pull out the phone and distract us and get us. I don't want this thing to dominate the conversation or derail it the way when I used to wear Google Glass, often, conversations inevitably become about Google Glass, which is the wrong thing for a wearable to be doing.
Instead of flashing an LED a color, can't you at least have a little e-ink display that just displays a word? That just display,
So rather than sort of change the Blush project, which is a little bit more focused on this idea of a 1-bit notification or a punctuative sort of thing.
Yeah, they're totally different things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a second thing that's actually not on the internet anywhere, but we'll put it up on the blog soon, called Clippy. And that is truly, it's a.
Oh, I'm good. Wait, named after the Microsoft Word thing? I know what you're talking about, or you're writing a letter.
Exactly. So Clippy is just a really tiny little OLED screen. These have been flooding the market recently. It's a what is it, 64 by 128 pixel. So it's that, and luckily this RF Arduino fits right on the back. So it's just a screen. and it's magnetic, so it clips on places. And all that does is show the latest batch of pinboard tags that I've assigned online. So I thought that was a nice way to make explicit, to be a little more like, ask me about these things than the way Blush would derail a conversation by saying, we did it. We said the magic word. Right. So Clippy is a little more performative. It's a little more like disclosing my browsing activity if we wanted to talk about it. And that's, obviously doesn't involve anyone else. That's just the tags I assigned on Pinboard, which makes the privacy question a lot more personal, a lot more easy to sort of say yes or no to is, do you use Clippy or not?
So it's more Monty Python conversation cards and less...
yes.
Less Pee Wee Herman, you said the magic word, or you said the secret word today.
I almost put that in my solid talk. I almost put the chair in my... Yeah, right? Because that's kind of that's the last thing you want is to, derail a conversation when someone says internet, which is inevitably in my curriculum.
Right.
People did try to troll me when I was wearing Blush, though, by sort of exploratorily doing impulse response and saying, like, Lindsay Lohan, to see if it goes off. Or,
trolling people's wearables. I love
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Shoe shopping.
Exactly. Yeah.
Social hacking. Yeah.
Big and tall men's clothes. Yeah.
Oh man, that's great.
Oh dear.
So this is really interesting space, actually, because I mean, how much does it end up affecting, like you said, with the glass? I've noticed the same thing you said with glass. It does kind of get in the way. But even still, I have to imagine if I'm talking to someone wearing Blush and it lights up, I'm going to have this pause in the conversation, and then I'll, eventually you get used to it, right? But there's still that kind of just baked into wearables in general.
Yeah, is why am I blinking? We've sort of learned not to ask about Fitbits, right? We're kind of used to these wearables doing a thing just for their owner. And Blush was a little bit to sort of provoke, to say, I'm wearing a heart-shaped blinking pendant. What do you make of that? Right. Exactly. And that's what's nice about Blush, is not my hardware startup. It's an experiment. And that's wonderful luxury that's right. I'm also a dude who generally does not wear many other brooches, right? Except unless I'm wearing Blush. So there's a bit of artifice to it that comes with the territory, that comes with the experimentation. You're right that's truly a distracting part of it is the first time it goes off, I'm out 15 minutes explaining curriculum.
And then, exactly.
And then I've been I had my Android on and we're describing this conversation, but no, it doesn't go anywhere. I don't keep this information.
Maybe you could give them a card from now on that points into this episode.
So do these social outward wearables, for want of a better term, need to be self-explanatory to be successful?
I really wonder about that. I think that's a huge factor in their long-term plausibility. Yeah. So I think that you're right. Legibility at a distance is a huge part of how I size you up, right? When I see you across the room, I'm doing the things all humans do. I look at, how you're put together, what clothes you're wearing, what your affect is, and
are you a threat?
Are you a threat? How engaged is my endocrine system? Is this fight or flight?
Right, exactly.
But at the same, and yet we've already learned to figure out how busy someone is by if they're idly toying with their phone or if they're really, swiping out a furious message. We're already active on this band a little bit. I think we'll grow into it a lot more. But you're right that legibility, Blush is both legible and inscrutable.
Well, because it's only a 1-bit interface. That's the nature of the beast, exactly. Right? I'm an electronics design guy, right? And if I saw you wearing this, I'd go, and I saw it flash, I would have no clue whatsoever what it's at. I would need the 15-minute explanation. and I'm a technical guy, let alone some muggle. Right?
No, totally, exactly. No, I hear you. And that's one of the real design challenges of social wearables is how to make this legible at all distances, how to have this go deeper when you need it to go deeper, but also maybe even remain concealed, maybe even remain, what if this was an LED embedded in my lapel rather than clipped onto it? Right. That blinking still needs a social structure around which I'm going to explain it. So there's this Kate Hartman, who runs the Social Body Lab in Toronto, or outside of Toronto, has this hardware kit called Nudgeables. Have you guys come across that?
Nudgeables?
Nudgeables.
No, but it's a cool name.
No, don't think
It's a
so.
pretty
Yeah, I
cool
like that.
name. So it's 1-bit haptic interactions between partners at a distance. So it's a little board with a XB radio
Ooh,
on
so
it.
you can vibrate your partner. Is that the...
Exactly, and
From
it's
a
meant
distance.
Easy,
for
Dave.
Well,
Easy,
you know, that's the
Dave,
first
they
thing that's
went
on
there.
my mind,
You know,
you know.
they went there. But it's they've filled
They
out.
went there, didn't they?
They did. They filled out this whole vocabulary of
Right.
secret, messages inscribed on this 1-bit that a partner, two partners, they come to an agreement about what that thing will mean.
Well, you would need more than 1 bit, though. Where you'd need
Really,
at least...
to say, just get me out of here, get me out of this conversation.
Oh, well,
I mean-
if you prearranged that,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I would think that at least another bit would make it a bit more useful.
Really useful, sure. Well, we love all the bits. I mean, the more bits,
Yeah,
the better.
exactly.
But-
The more bits, the better. It gets back to the old PC paradigm, right?
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting use case for the Nudgeables, though, because they're designed to be concealable and they're private. They're one way or one.
Oh,
they're
okay,
between two
right.
people.
I'm getting it. So if you're at a party, if you're at a
Exactly.
party and you go like, "This is boring as batshit. Let's get the hell out of here." You can
You just
okay.
cross the scarf around your neck, and it
Right.
turns out the scarf has 2 conductive strips, and crossing
Yep.
it closes the circuit, and suddenly your partner's pocket vibrates. And
So it is
that's awesome.
the modern equivalent to the nudge under the table, the little
Exactly.
sidekick to your
Yeah.
partner, right?
And there's
I
such
get
a rich
right.
territory there that we've just started to be able to address that almost ambient 1-bit sort of notification layer that can live on the body. That for me was the most wonderful thing about Google Glass, which I really dedicated. I tried for 3.5 months to wear it absolutely as much as possible. And the real benefit, which Chris can attest, is quite something.
Yeah, no, I liked it.
Yeah.
I haven't worn it much lately.
No, yeah, but the thing that it really did for me was enable this gestural layer of notification that I think is really promising. So just being able to swipe and dismiss a text message rather than dig out a phone, unlock the phone, and do all that stuff. That's kind of the sort of affordance that it grants that is durably enjoyable to me.
Yeah. I've actually so with the haptic type stuff, I've actually talked to a friend about this before. And you think about it with like a multi-bit, higher bandwidth kind of interaction between people. I think the brain has enough plasticity that eventually you could start to have a secondary language, right?
Oh, I'm so into that. Yes.
Yeah? Nice. All right, cool. So go make that and we'll have you back on again. Right. But I mean, like, that's the idea, is like thinking now, like extending curriculum and Blush kind of out, right? So now what if you started to get, multiple buzzes for a certain topic? You'd actually start to develop a new vocabulary based on,
Definitely.
this sixth sense of sorts.
Yeah.
And
it's
through
very
need
interesting.
of the low bit interface as well.
Yeah, true. Right.
So,
right.
Particularly, a concealable wearable, a wearable that I wear, to have this superpower of invisible extra information. There's a bunch there that's really interesting. I ordered some heating pads from Adafruit, some thermal pads.
Oh yeah,
and made a version of the Blush hardware that can handle a bunch of current. And we've been experimenting with this actuator that it cuffs to the back of your neck, and it gets quite hot when an actuation occurs, just to feel what it's like to map heat to different parts of the body. Like, how finely can I resolve it? Can I perceive a difference between 50% PWM and full on?
Well, you're in analog world now,
Well,
Yay.
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
This is
Super-
not digital anymore. It's
No,
analog.
there's nothing more analog than hot heat to skin.
That's right.
And so
Thresholds.
far, yeah, exactly. But so far, that's been a little difficult to train myself as well as I can train myself for vibration patterns, for example.
Right.
But Disney has made this really cool thing, Revel. Have you seen that? Reverse electrotactile vibration. It's a surface. When you draw your finger across the surface, you feel a pattern like like herringbone
like
pattern,
a braille.
like
or
braille. Yeah, but if you
Right.
put your finger and it's still, you don't feel anything. And so it's this very strange way to map different textures only to fingers moving. And I'm really interested in figuring out a way to put that on the body somewhere that you wouldn't notice reading braille, basically,
Yeah.
like at the bottom of
Like
my
on your
pocket.
leg, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that'd be really interesting. I think there's so much in this space where, we're writing these steganographic signals to each other, hidden in other bands.
But are you just skirting around the edges here with all this haptic, heat and touch and all that sort of stuff? Why not just go directly into the brain? Is that the ultimate, like you have a head-mounted wearable, like a thing which, ultimately can, feed information straight into the brain rather than through the senses?
I would purchase that. That's a little outside my comfort area in terms of things I think I can learn without killing myself.
But they are researching these sort. There are groups out, university groups out there researching this sort of stuff, and it works. You can
really?
Especially for disabled people who who can feed information directly in and all that sort of blind people and
there's a bunch of interesting technology there. That is probably a good definition of where I would read someone else's research paper and then implement things rather than forge my own path.
I'll just strap this coil on my head and see what happens.
When I was at the Media Lab,
Krasnow levels.
I was obsessed with this idea at the Media Lab of making a secret party finder, so a wearable that would basically guide you to a party. And it was based on this guy's research. This man, Professor Inami from Japan, he had determined that differential high voltage on either side of your head, basically around both temples, dynamically affected your balance. And so you could remote control somebody and have them lurch, pitch left because they think they're off balance. And it was this really rough means.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wasn't able to find the research paper.
Let's just put high voltage either side of my temple and see what happens.
So after I purchased some EL wire and took apart the inverter and then shocked myself, I determined that I probably was not going to pursue this line of research any further.
It's all about the current limits.
Exactly.
Limits.
And I tested it on my hand first, but
but you could be such a great Darwin Award winner.
Oh man,
researcher kills himself.
Remote controlling himself into the East River or whatnot. Yeah, and debugging that is crazy. We have an Oculus Rift in the lab, and debugging that is really interesting because you vomit if you did it wrong. You're replacing so many senses at once that you can really make yourself sick very quickly.
a digital response
exactly.
with food projectile.
Yes. Yeah. Prognosis negative.
That's a binary output right there.
Exactly.
Yeah. You either puke or you don't.
Yeah, and if you don't, then ship it or whatever.
Wow. Oh, so how much? Tell us about this lab more too. So you must have some pretty sick toys. I mean, what do you have there?
Well, we have
brag. Go on, brag.
We have a pretty full kit of fabrication equipment. I'm super psyched. We're getting the EX1, that circuit printer. I'm pretty excited to experiment with printable trace antennas for that. That seems like a pretty cool application. Foldable electronics is kind of neat as well. We have a MakerBot. We have really nice soldering setup. A bunch of mechanical components ordered from old projects before I showed up that I can just sort of pick from and cannibalize, which is really nice. What else? We got the Oculus Rift. We did some stuff with the Leap Motion. We have a million Kinects. I kind of love the Kinects still. Anytime you need durable, 3D positioning. But I think, the kind of awesome thing for me as the hardware guy at the lab is 7 other people are really into, doing hardware and collaborating, and they have ideas I'd never come up with. So it's kind of an awesome, I'm the guy who gets to make the stuff, and there's no shortage of stuff to get made.
Yep.
So you'd also mentioned in your list of stuff, you said you're working on some other stuff in the future, like CNC stuff you had mentioned. Is that just kind of yet to be published, or?
I'm not sure that would even be publish worthy. I built a Zen Toolworks CNC mill from a kit a while ago, and have crazy customized it with a new spindle and end stops. I couldn't believe it didn't come with end stops. So I'm looking to add. To put the BeagleBone Black in charge of that rather than a Garble setup that I have right now. and I figure that'll be a good way to learn the programmable real-time unit on BeagleBone. But then some other CNC projects that are way far out. I've been trying and failing for more than a year now to come up with a really good motion control system to do time lapses like they have on Blue Planet. Do you know the BBC show Blue Planet? Where it's Richard Attenborough, and they'll have this pan over the forest floor over the course of like 6 months. You know, the snow melts and so
they're
I would like to do
amazing
that.
shots.
Yeah, so I have a hydroponic garden at home where I grow peppers and basil and lettuce and stuff, and time lapses of that. I never get tired of time lapses of plants transpiring.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So being able to circle around the stem of something or whatnot would be really cool.
Have you seen? There actually was a controller. Who was I saw working on that? There was one.
OpenMoko is one of them.
Yeah, I think that might have been the one. It was like out of the. I saw it during a video for. That was not the Make Space. What's the one out in the tech shop? There was a tech shop video.
Oh, okay.
And it was someone like doing the actual manufacturing of that. It might have been OpenMoko or something else. But
yeah, so far the thing I'm terrible at is designing mechanically sound carriages and components. I never had any mechy training, and I worked with these great undergrads at the Media Lab, but never really got a sense of what their process was, how they throw out a terrible idea. So I've been 3D printing a lot of things that, like, I'll get home, I'll put them on the carriage, and then I'll turn the motor on, and I'll have snapped it right in half. Or so yeah, I've at this point bought a bunch of 80/20 and a bunch of different aluminum extrusions, but no working prototypes so far.
Yeah, you'll get there.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it's an inevitable Brownian in motion type thing. If there are things in my apartment that just get jiggled around enough, they'll fit into some cool form.
Yeah.
Well, with wearables, I mean, it's almost as if a lot of the art goes into the physical form factor.
Yeah.
I mean, how you actually package and manufacture the things, and
yeah, and that's kind of a weird barrier to entry right now, don't you think? I think
totally.
My miniaturizing electronics has always been quite difficult for me because I'm a pretty nervous SMD solderer, and
right,
and just miniaturizing anything is fairly daunting. I think that's a real gate right now between having an idea that isn't just, have a sensor, record its values, and send it off to the cloud. Mm-hmm. Anything beyond that is somehow is quite difficult. Silicone molding a band.
Yeah.
Or, let's get away from silicone bands. But molding any type of wearable interface is usually fairly. It takes a lot to get it to look good.
Yeah, it's it's almost always machining of some type if you want it to be super durable, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Guerrilla Guide to CNC machining? You ever read that one?
I haven't. No.
It's the Bible that got me started in CNC machining.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, it talks about that too, with like all of the micro scale, the actual like forming stuff and stuff like that. It's just. It's a crazy document, but it's awesome.
Cool.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, mostly I've been using the CNC machine to mill silicone molds, and using it for that, and chocolate molds. Actually, my wife gave me these 2 huge tubs of food-safe silicone, and so I've been feverishly trying to learn how to temper chocolate so I don't make disgusting chocolate bars. But
like in funny shapes or what? Is
this
like
I mean, so far I've done a line art portrait of my dog and some geometric shapes, kind of as proof of concept. But but it's super fun. I love casting stuff because it's goopy and wetware.
And you get to eat at the end.
And you get to eat at the end after you've washed your hands of the platinum cure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that is an interesting barrier. I think your job especially shows how much crossover there can be these days. I mean, do you guys split out into disciplines in your lab at all, or is it mostly everybody does everything?
We all do different weird things. So we sort of try to fill in each other's weak spots. I don't think there's even coverage across. We're all coders. We can all write a Tornado server or whatnot. But in terms of what our specialties are, we generally keep fairly distinct so that if we were to add a new employee, that person would bring something new to fill out our skill set.
Right.
So you find yourself like adding on to other projects a lot as well?
Yeah, often, I'll insert a provocation near the end and say, the control for this could be something really cool, or, the interface that people use to get into this system could be hardware, could be, something interesting. And, some projects start from the tech. They start from, we have these amazing, small BLE things, and we've been talking wearables for a year. Let's do something.
So do you guys have like a mandate to open source all this stuff and publish it, do white papers, things like that? Is that part of your
it's
mandate?
Definitely, it's one of our values. We all individually came from different open source communities, pretty much to a one of us. We have longstanding communities that we owe a lot of debt to. So we very much try, particularly since, often we'll build a thing off of an open source project and give that back and add to it. I truly don't know if one of our actual mandates is to open source stuff, but it's certainly encouraged and well received when we do that.
Right.
I think there are a couple things that maybe were something that, the Times needed to retain the intellectual property on that, but I actually can't remember
sure.
any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But generally, because we're working 3 to 5 years out, there's no immediate application. And so it's really just a useful thing to throw back to the community and see what gets made.
How do you mainly do like internal white papers and stuff like that to document, if you've just experimented with something and, like you can't just keep it in your head. You've got to document it in some way so everyone else in the group can
definitely
sort of access it.
Yeah, that's one of the big challenges of any R&D lab with as much freedom as we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making sure that, if I spent 4 weeks getting BeagleBone to boot something else, let's write that down. So, when it's something that we think is generally interesting, we'll try and write it up on our blog and make it available. But that's a fairly new effort. I think we've only been doing that for a half year or so. Right. In the past, we've published white papers. We'll do technical talks or critical talks.
Yep.
Part of the Times' R&D department existing is it existing in the world, in the community we deal with. So it's important and actually a really useful thing to be, to write up what you do a day is not a habit I developed on my own.
No. Yep.
Yeah, my personal blog used to be just like a series of angry notes to myself after finally figuring something out.
Yeah. So you're into lots of art installations and things like that.
Totally.
Tell us about those.
Well, so my background, I was an undergrad in the art department at Harvard, and at the time that I went, actually the 4-year stretch that I went was the only time that they had a new media track. So I actually got into, after actually failing the ham radio exam 5 different times when I was when I was 12. My whole family was a ham, and I just kept taking and failing the exam. But I got back into electronics when I realized that the really interesting installation experiences were becoming interactive. And I thought that was a really interesting way to I had started at college thinking I was going to be a math and poetry major, and be a super Renaissance man.
Right.
It turns out you have to write one thesis that addresses both of those things, which wasn't going to be feasible. So I got into video art. Video art was this really nice way to wield live analog hardware and create, I got really into analog feedback for a while, which is kind of a space I could go there forever. It's a wonderful fractal chaos. Yeah. It's gorgeous. But so I began constructing interactive video environments that had a sort of, tech component to them. Man, one of the things that I think I'm probably most famous for online, maybe to my chagrin, is this thing called steak filter, where I just ran analog video through a steak while I was cooking, and it changes the video signal in this really interesting way because as it dries out, the quality of conductance gets lower. And
of course.
So this was in.
Well, you can do that with almost anything.
Of course.
But that's, exactly.
The blog coverage was pretty chuffed that it was a steak because steak filter sounds interesting, and
of course, This is great. I'm just watching the video.
Oh yeah. So the end installation for that was in the Harvard Museum of Natural History, which is one of the oldest collections of stuffed taxidermy animals. And I had to go through a bunch of different tests to prove that I wasn't going to permanently imbue these animals with the smell of steak. So I had to actually, before getting approval, I had to, cook a steak next to this fur coat that I got at a thrift store just to show, the smell goes away.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
In general, I think that tech influenced art has really come a long way in the last decade. It's gone.
Oh, totally.
It's kept this really wonderful engagement with the state of the art, with the recently possible.
Yep.
And it's such a nice way to make people consider, interactions with a smartphone don't have to be heads down, not looking at anyone, Googling myself. They can be these exploratory. They can afford all these new interactions. We can share a joke about Wi-Fi that wouldn't have made any sense 10 years ago.
Yep.
And
exactly.
so, engaging socially and critically with all those sort of different influences, the thing that art can do best, I think, is, put you in this safe space where you can have an experience unlike, going to work and really take something out of it that might influence your sort of everyday outlook on things.
Yeah, because it's like exploded in the last decade or so. All I'm now seeing is these massively complex and hideously expensive technical art installations. I mean, we've got one here in Sydney, the Vivid Festival, which I didn't, and it's all about,
massive projection
lighting
mapping.
up stuff with massive projection mapping and doing an interactive light shows.
Get all the lumens on there,
Yeah. And it's just mad.
Yeah, I would never begrudge
in a good way,
supporting
of course.
an artist.
I mean,
exactly.
It's great.
It's crazy. And there's, I tend to be a little more amenable to the smaller interactions. The tiny little things, or the little idiosyncratic behaviors that might emerge from using somebody's artistic art piece. But like nudgeables are a nice example. They're designed to be social provocations more than any particular product or a good business idea. But what they do is they let you play with this tech that's all around us that we're used to being sold and being sold a relationship that's consumer only, do not open. It's so nice to let people open that stuff up.
And I find it's remarkable that companies are willing to put so much money into these sorts of art installations. I mean, some companies are putting millions of dollars into developing just some fancy sculpture that, lights up and interacts and does all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, to an extent, there's also just sort of the tastes of the art world are leaning towards interactive or augmented creations these days. It'll be interesting in 30 years when we say, oh, that thing, it's interactive, and we share a joke about the Kinect or something like, don't wear your Dazzle camouflage to this one.
That was so 2010s.
Exactly. Let me guess. When I wave my arms,
I can't believe
does it make music?
Yeah. That was such an embarrassing decade.
So what about your? I mean, so I'm also on your site and looking at a lot of this stuff, and you've done some pretty high name consulting as well.
That was a great time.
Image and Heap, and where does all this come from?
That came from the Media Lab. That's really a charmed place. I was fixing, so I was in the Hyper Instruments group at the Media Lab, which is like, new music composition interfaces and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I was fixing a device that had caught fire because we didn't do the electromagnets right, and there was a short. So I was sort of busily turning off the power and fixing a thing, and I turned around, and Bjork was standing there dressed head to toe in a velvet Little Lord Fauntleroy suit that was sort of bright purple. And she said, hi, I make music. Can you show me your stuff? And so I showed her a couple things we were working on. And from that, she and Michel Gondry asked me and a colleague to participate in the Biophilia project. So that was super cool. That was probably the fanciest thing I've ever worked on.
Biophilia, what is that?
Biophilia was an album that Bjork put out a couple years ago, and the idea was its central theme was the sort of physical process, the natural world processes that lead to sound. So cyclic things being tied to phases of planetary interactions, resonance, Chladni plates, all the sort of cool demos you can do with physics and sound. So I collaborated
feedback
and
let's do an album full of feedback.
Yeah, that's not been done before.
Right.
But that was a crazy experience. That was, it was right after graduation. I was moving down to New York to be with my wife, and also trying to set up lab to fabricate massive, 18-foot pendulums to play Bjork's music. So that was a good one. Bjork is like the nicest lady. We Skyped all the time, and she's a real. She understands how weird people make stuff. She's right on it.
Yeah, I think we would have guessed that. Yeah.
There was this thing where she, and maybe it stemmed from this. She did some video of how a TV were taken apart, a TV or something. This went like viral or something.
That one is from when she was into Sugar Cubes. That one is from the 80s.
Sugar Cubes? What?
Yeah, that was the band she used to play with before she was just Bjork. It was Bjork and the Sugar Cubes, and they were like weird acid jazz. No, that's from forever ago.
Yeah.
But I do like that video. At one point, she says like, "Don't trust a poet" or something kind of wonderful.
Something weird. It was. There's always. So I wonder about this. So we had Todd Bailey on the show too, and he did a lot of artwork. And I think I've asked him this before too, and like, I'm just like, well, doesn't it just get too weird sometimes? That's what I always wonder about, like working with artists and that kind of stuff. Like, don't you ever just stop and go, really? Like,
well, I think there's a difference between a collaboration and working for another artist. And that's kind of a thing I learned freelancing for other people, is that, freelancing and implementing someone else's idea that you don't maybe think is amazing is really hard to do if it's not working at 2 a.m. and it has to work. Yeah. So it might as well be like a soup you cooked. It might as well be your own hole that you are buried in. So collaborating is really, I think, a really critical part, like understanding at the beginning that what we're going to do is trade ideas and then I'll make it rather than give me the spec, let me fabricate this in time.
Right.
Although I would have imagined that artists wouldn't be like that. No, this is my vision, and how
That's
dare
important.
you
I respect
tell
that
me,
too. No, as an artist, when I have commissioned other things to be fabricated, I'm not interested in a collaboration. What I'd like is for someone to wield their expertise to get it as much as I would like it as possible. Yeah. So I totally understand both sides of those, but I've learned that, the way I'm either going to be on the supply side of a fabrication contract, or we're going to collaborate and come to a compromise about what the best thing to make is.
And to me, there's no difference there between art, like we're talking about, and me designing my little pet project, right? I don't want anyone telling me how to do it. This is my idea, and I'm going to do it the way I like. I don't care what you think.
And that's why you're doing it, and not
exactly.
I really like that. That's one of the things that I really like about the maker community is there's no right way to wire up an Arduino and make the project you want to make today. It's what you bring to it and what you want to get from it. Super empowering.
That's why I think all these collaborative projects. I'm not going to say they're doomed to failure, but, people are always talking about the holy grail of like some open source hardware project where everyone contributes to it and this magic project pops out the other end, right? I'm always of the opinion that that's just not possible. It has to be one person's vision. I think I agree. One person driving it.
Well, I'm getting a huge amount out of. Do you agree, Chris?
I agree as well. I mean, you could try it. You could split things up. You can segment, but you can't. Yeah, opinions are
that talent of wrangling different creative folks to get all of those cats to manage to form a shape visible from space. That's an incredible talent that I do not possess. I've been enjoying Limpkin, and I don't know this man's real name. But
that's Mathieu. That's Mathieu Stefan.
So his write-up of Multipass has been really, really illuminating simply because that's a cool project that a lot of people appear to have feedback on. I'm impressed with that.
I have been too. So obviously I see that because of my new gig. But I mean, he told me about it. I'm like, no, that doesn't work.
Exactly. But, like, good luck, my friend.
Right. Well, and there's varying levels. I think the one model that I've always been really, really impressed with has been Quirky. But basically they have these processes built in of like, there's different. There's different levels of how people can participate, right? It's different of like, let's all choose a chip together, or what color should this be? Let's all vote and not talk about it.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't checked out Quirky. I've seen a couple things from them at different in-person events where I've seen some of their interesting products. I didn't realize that there were different levels to participation.
Yeah. So yeah, they have like people submit ideas and then basically there's payouts based on each one as well, which is an interesting.
So it's
social
freelance
experiment.
project management.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I guess so.
Or labor of love project management.
I think so, but there is an economic incentive there too, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
So.
Huh. That's interesting. There's a little bit of that aspect of Kickstarters where,
Yeah.
You certainly the product being sold is often this feeling of participation or co-creation.
Right.
Yeah, and people have to believe in the person as much as the project, right? But
more so, because often the project is not there yet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Speaking of other projects, I wanted to talk a little bit about Grid-Eye because we had actually mentioned this, I think, on the show, and I got to see this when I met you in person. Can you tell us about kind of like the tech specs on this thing?
Totally, yeah. I'm so jazzed about it, and I don't have anywhere to put it, so I'd love to talk about it. It's basically I found this Panasonic thermal camera. It's an 8x8 pixel thermal camera. The thermal resolution per pixel is, I think, 0.025 degrees Celsius, so way more accurate than I would ever need. I basically just have the RF Arduino, that ARM Cortex M0 Bluetooth 4 chip, talks to that and addresses a little OLED screen, and the end result is this little tiny thermal camera that has a screen right on it and that can also send frames off to an Android to be recorded. And really that project came because I have wanted a thermal camera ever since I was really little, ever since there's a Red Dwarf episode where a shape-shifting alien, the polymorph, comes. And I've just wanted it ever since I've seen, seeing other spectra is like a main theme of my life. I would love to see all the spectra. And this is slowly building out my vision of being able to.
You want to be a mantis shrimp, huh?
Yeah. I want to see polarized light. I want to see Wi-Fi. I want Hertzian space to come to me.
0.025 is that real? 0.025 degrees C is the resolution?
That's the reported resolution.
That's not
extremely.
That's not uncommon for these thermal camera modules.
Yeah, and there's a lot of hedging in the data sheet about emissivity and distance, and so I've shone it at the oven, and it's certainly decimal accurate. It's certainly able to do that, and I kind of don't care beyond decimal accuracy, to be honest. For the sake of BLE, I might even chop off the integer or the integer part and just preserve that. I mean, it's just going to turn into colored squares.
Well, what's the dynamic range of that then too? I mean, can you scale it up or down pretty well?
It's huge. Yeah, I'm doing a really naive auto gain on mine, but I believe it's down to minus 40 Celsius and really high up. I think 300 or 400 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so like type K almost, right? Yeah.
Almost, yeah. I think K goes higher than that, but it's non-contact, so it's it has to do with distance as well. And there's actually a whole family. So there's high gain, low gain, and 3v3 and 5v. And I'm currently using the 3v3 high gain, so I'm not sure what the other specs are. But it's a $40 component. It's it blows my mind. It's a weird package, and one of the things I hoped to do with Grid-Eye was just share the Eagle part that I made for it that works, and the other sort of working I2C interface code. But the weird thing that I've never encountered with a component before, and that I sort of think of you guys when I do this, because you're kind of where I go to hear about cool weird components, or EEV blog always has weird analog video boards from the 80s or whatnot. I failed twice at getting this chip because you have to sign an export control agreement. And so so when I first applied to get it from DigiKey, maybe I was a little bit of a jerk, and in the application, what are you going to do with it? I just wrote U.S. citizen because I was a little put out about, what do you mean I can't just order
Patriot.
This? Exactly. Yeah, I didn't draw the "Don't tread on me" snake, but I was almost there, and instantly rejected. So I had to be honest about my application. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, they read those forms. It turns out.
No way.
Yeah, and so that's actually I really want Grid-Eye to. I want someone else in the world to build it, but I really don't feel cool putting it on Tindy, for example, because I don't have the time or professional inclination to deal with export control for my end users.
You made 36 sales in Iran.
Exactly, right?
Enjoy the paperwork.
Part of the agreement is no targeting systems, which is, I mean, I understand that they mean fatal targeting, but what if I meant like water balloon targeting? You know, there are other, you know, and I certainly don't want to go down that territory of having lied about my application. So, you know, I'm a little, there's a bit of a chilling effect to that form, which is sad because it's a, 64 pixel thermal camera.
Yeah.
Super cool.
And you're paying $40 for it, so that's
$40 is there's one with a less stringent export requirement that's $90, and it is bonkers to work with. This is my most recent enormous failure is I still can't get a repeated start condition on I2C working with Arduino, and it's like I've learned way more than I want to know about ARM Cortex registers.
Yep.
No, it's good to know, though.
Why is this even export restricted? That's ridiculous. I mean, is it even an American-made component?
No, it's Japanese, but I think...
Exactly.
Panasonic. I think Japan labors under some pretty strict treaties about weaponry.
Yeah. Well, and also it's sometimes it's the DigiKeys and the Element 14s that are they're the ones enforcing that stuff. Dave, I've lectured you on this before. We've had arguments.
Hey, I'm on a bloody watch list, dude.
Are you?
I know you are. Yeah. I think that was the episode where we talked about it. It's not it's the people who are doing compliance, so they don't get lawyered.
It's a bit of a CYA sort of a thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's stupid, but
yeah. Well, that'll
that's
change.
a really cool project, though.
Thanks. I purposely sought you out to meet you and to show you that thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did. And what's this other one, the fixture thing? So the fixture
is the latest art-like thing that I've made. Fixture is it's powered by Spark Core, the little CC3300 Wi-Fi board that was on Kickstarter a while ago. Mm-hmm. And it's a real simple hardware setup. That Spark Core drives a 60 pixel NeoPixel array. And it's really a spin on remote presence. So I have an Android app that every minute that the Android is on samples the exact orientation of the phone. So is it, facing the ground? Is it flat because I'm sitting down? Is it flat on the other side because I'm charging it? So, and it linearly just maps the XYZ accelerometer values to RGB color values. And that ends up showing you these sort of stints of activity. And so it does it every minute. So I get this pretty full portrait of what the phone's position is during the day. So you can tell, when I got up, when I was walking around the subway, when I sat down and watched TV for a long time. All those things sort of show up as an activity bar. And there's a time lapse on my website that sort of shows how it develops. But the idea was to sort of figure out this, again, with Blush also, it's this balance of specificity and ambiguity that lets us write our own meanings into what we see there. And so I've just been living with Fixture. It's kind of a nice, I put it in my wife's office so she can sort of see where, if I'm on the move or if I'm headed home. And she doesn't.
You should be doing chores and you're on your butt. Yeah.
Not the first dumb tech I've put in her office but she hasn't turned this off. So, I'm interested in it just as like a sort of sculpture about something remote that's happening.
And it's almost like the Weasley's family clock in Harry Potter.
There's a little bit of a Harry Potter vibe. There's no danger indicator, but
well, if you started shaking violently, I'm sure that you could
or if it shows
display that as red or
running from police or whatever. But the other sort of part of it that's interesting to me is that we're so ready to use the phone as a surrogate for my presence somewhere. It's become such a thing that I'm known. You'd think I was in trouble, right? If my phone turned up somewhere and I wasn't there. So a little bit of the theoretical interest for me for Fixture is being really specific about what we're measuring, not making any generalizations or saying, oh, it's my. I want to be very clear about the sort of linearity of the mapping that I'm doing. And the attempt at continuity is in the same way, trying to a lot of sort of digital or web art projects now will often, tell a story about themselves that fudges the truth just a little bit about, this is a continuous thing or this is exactly my heartbeat or my emotional affect, when in fact there are a bunch of algorithms behind this, right? There are a bunch of mappings and translations and normalizations we do that we just easily let those things surrogate the meaning we want them to mean. And so Fixture for me was sort of an attempt to be very, very, to fix in place exactly what mapping, exactly what feat is being accomplished.
Okay, so I have a task for you going forward. I want you at the New York Times research lab to implement smell as a new a new way of delivering information.
I can do that.
When someone talks about something, it releases the smell of cookies, and when someone mentions the amp hour, it releases the smell of solder smoke, and yada yada yada.
I will take that mission. That's an achievable and fascinating mission. I can do that.
Smell-o-vision comes to life.
Exactly. Patent pending. Patent pending.
That's
right.
No, please, no.
That was a Simpsons joke. Yeah.
Boy,
we're in good company here, Dave.
absolutely. I love it.
So, where can people find all your work and everything? I mean, this has been awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, they should go to nytlabs.com. And that's our main sort of presence, and then the blog is linkable from there. And then my personal site, which I've started updating again, is akamediasystem.com.
Right, and that's also how people can find you on Twitter. Often,
that's
jabbering back and forth with me. And
exactly.
Others.
Yeah. Wouldn't pay too much attention to what I say on Twitter, but it's a good way to reach me.
Stuff. Yeah. I was very confused when you came up to me at Solid. It took me a while to put together who you were.
Yeah, I have to remember to do the mapping first. I'm the person who has a different name.
Yep. Yeah. Right. All right. Well, Dave, any final questions?
No. Thank you very much for joining us, Noah.
Thank you guys so much. This has been such a pleasure. Yeah.
I love hearing about this sort of stuff. It's fascinating.
Well, check in regularly.
All right, we will.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Thanks, mate.
Mm-hmm.
See ya.
Bye.